Would you all please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you and welcome to this meeting of the New Hampshire Fish and Game Commission, October 10th, 2018. The public is entitled to attend all commission meetings, and when recognized by the chairman, the public may speak on any item on the agenda. The chairman reserves the right to limit public comments to the extent necessary for the orderly conduct of the meeting. Before we get started, I'd like to introduce our newest member to the commission, Christina Luppi from Rockingham County. Welcome aboard, Christina.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Was that this one?
Oh, okay. Okay. First item, approval of the September 12th, 2018 commission minutes. We have an amended copy, amended last page. I don't know if everybody's had a chance to look at that. So the minute says written with these amendments.
Move to approve as amended.
Okay, motion made by Commissioner Stohl, second.
I have the correction when you get there.
Okay, seconded by Commissioner Temple. Discussion, go ahead, Commissioner Baldwin.
Yes, I have a correction under the reference Commissioner Baldwin report. It should read the public meeting in Franconia relative to erecting platform and a 10-foot walkway on Profile Lake was discussed at great length. The representatives of the town of Franconia, Selectmen, and Franconia Conservation Committee are strongly against the project. The majority of those that spoke were in favor of the project. The New Hampshire Fish and Game Department has signed off on the project. Thank you.
Okay, but will you, that change would be added to these changes?
Yes.
Correct.
So that, are you still okay with that vote, Commissioner Stoll?
Yes.
The second is okay. Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Next item, consent agenda. The following items have been grouped together and are hereby noticed as consent agenda items to expedite action on routine matters, which may not require public discussion. The commission may vote to approve these matters as presented. Commission members may remove certain items if further public input or discussion is deemed necessary. 2A, approval to accept a $500 donation from the Nash Stream Camp Owners Association to be utilized by the Inland Fisheries Division. 2B, approval to accept a $300 donation in memory of James Macris of Concord, New Hampshire, made to the Aquatic Education Program from the following donors. Merrill Fay of Guilford, New Hampshire, $200. Maryland River Condo Campground LLC of Wells, Maine, $100 for a total of $300. Anybody want to make a motion to accept? Motion made by Commissioner Carr, seconded by Commissioner Patch. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Item 3, approval to utilize up to $1,200 from the sale of fish food account to purchase a new sand filtration system and ultraviolet light for the Newhampton State Fish Hatchery. Jason Smith.
Good afternoon, Chairman Phillipson, Director Normandeau, and members of the Commission. For those who I have not met yet, my name is Jason Smith. I'm currently the Chief of the Inland Fisheries Division, and welcome aboard, and I'm sure we'll be meeting in person soon. Inside your packet, you should have received a copy of the statute that governs one of our dedicated accounts, which is called the Sale of Fish Food Account. And if you visit any one of our hatcheries, you will see some vending machines there where you put a quarter in, you get a handful of fish food. Those revenues go into this dedicated account, which essentially is earmarked for replacement of hatchery equipment, and it was recently amended to include emergency purchase of trout eggs. So I just wanted to give you that background because there are quite a few members on the commission, and I thought that would be some useful information. So our New Hampton hatchery up in New Hampton, New Hampshire, is one of our primary egg sources for brook trout and brown trout for all our hatchery programs. We have an open reservoir where sometimes, especially this time of year with migrating birds and egg incubation season, that the waterfowl will get in the reservoir, they'll stir up turbidity, a lot of silt. It's very bad for egg fertilization rates, and it is very bad for early life stage survival of fry. What happens is the silt gets into the gills, fish have a tough time breathing, and survival is poor. So what we're proposing to purchase here is a filtration system very similar to what you'd have in a big pool. It'll filter all the silt. The clean water or filtered water will then go through ultraviolet system, ultimately removing any bacteria, pathogens that could cause harm to the fish, in hopes of improving survival at our hatcheries. So unless anyone has any other questions regarding what we're looking to do here, I would seek your approval to expend these funds.
Commissioner Patch. Motion to accept.
Second.
Commissioner Green, second. Any discussion? Commissioner Carr.
The funding for this particular account, where does that come from?
So you've been to some of our hatcheries. We have vending machines where you can buy a handful of fish food with a quarter in. Those quarters go into this account.
Wow, that's a lot of fish feed.
We have a lot of visitors at our hatcheries, yeah.
That's awesome, great.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments? All in favor of approval signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So move it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Next item, approval to expend $30,000 from the game management account for the construction of a road that will provide direct access to approximately 2,000 acres of forest land specifically managed for woodcock and grouse. However, also beneficial to hare, deer, bear, moose, and an array of non-game species with Jim Aor.
Good afternoon, Commissioners and Director Normandeau. And last month we provided this as an information item. This month we're presenting it as an action item, and we are requesting the Commission approval to expend $30,000 from the game management account to fund the construction of this woods road. Hold on 1 second. Just to briefly summarize again, or get you back up to speed on what this project is, we're talking about 3 parcels of land owned by Bay Root, outlined in red there on the map, referred to as the Wilderness Road Tract, the Warren's Access Tract, and the Quebec Junction Tract. And you can see that they're located in the towns of Carroll and Bethlehem. This is Route 3 right here, 115, and the Twin Mountain Hatchery. So 4,800 acres owned by Bay Root, managed by Wagner Woodlands. And they've been working with the Wildlife Management Institute to do a pretty comprehensive habitat management project here, focused on young forest habitat. Most of the habitat looks like this currently, still in really good shape for things like upland game birds, but we don't want all of that to grow out of good habitat condition at the same time, so they've been following up and doing periodic patch cuts like you see right there. That was done in 2009. So over time, they're going to be entering these properties every 7 to 10 years and always creating young forest habitat. So as some areas grow out of good young forest habitat condition, you're going to have others following on its heels. They're also maintaining the log landings as wildlife openings through brush hogging and creating evening roost fields, 5 acres or more, creating and maintaining them. So the road in question is right here in black, 3,900 feet for the Warren's Access Tract and the Wilderness Road Tract. Wagner and Beirut currently have management access to this road through a field off of Route 3 that provides a deeded management access. It does not provide for public access. So Wagner and Beirut really don't need this Woods Road here to provide management access to continuing on with their work. But if we would like our constituents to benefit from the work that we're doing on Warren's Access and Wilderness Road, this 3,900 feet of road would need to be created, which links up to this section of Wilderness Road, which takes us to a town road in Carroll. So they're asking for $30,000 to complete that 3,900 feet, which would provide, again, public access, drivable access to all areas of Warren Access and Wilderness Road, about 2,000 acres that currently is not accessible. So this is what the impact would be on the game management account. It would make a very, very small dent, still over $1 million after the $30,000 was expended if you approve this expenditure. And the cost per acre per year for this project, only $1.50. So if you're thinking about a minimum of 10 years this will be open to the public, although they don't have any plans of selling the property anytime in the foreseeable future, but let's just use 10 years as an example. 10 years, 2,000 acres, $1.50 per acre per year for management access for our constituents. So the commission had several questions the last time we presented. One of the commissioners asked if Wagner and Beirut were, these tracks were planned for the Northern Pass route, and they were not. Asked about the gate status. Wagner and Beirut agreed to leave the gates unlocked and open mid-May through November of each year. And again, if the road conditions are suitable, if the weather conditions are suitable, they leave it open for even longer. How would we provide this funding to them? We would do it through a grant agreement, a State of New Hampshire grant agreement that would be approved by the Attorney General's office and the Governor and Council. And if for some reason they had to terminate the agreement prematurely, they would reimburse us at a prorated rate of $250 per month. And there's also a question about the Young Forest Project. What is the Young Forest Project? Who's involved? And the Young Forest Project is basically a collaborative of state wildlife agencies and nonprofit partners and universities, federal agencies, landowners, foresters, a bunch of different groups working together across the 17-state region, upper Midwest and the Northeast, all focused on advocating for young forest, all speaking with one mind, one voice. This is what young forest is, this is why it's important, this is how you create it, and then also developing opportunities for getting grant funding to use by the various partners to create more young forest habitat. So that in a nutshell is what the Young Forest Project is, and Fish and Game is definitely involved, and working with our partners. The Wildlife Management Institute is taking a leadership role in the Young Forest Project, and this really came out of the need for increasing the amount of woodcock habitat, because woodcock populations have declined, but since then it has been broadened to all the creatures that benefit from young forest. And in particular, New England cottontail and golden winged warbler have also been lumped into that umbrella of the Young Forest Project. Happy to take more questions about that if you got them.
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions for you. A couple of us actually went up and checked this project out last Sunday, and which wasn't may not have had the information, but wasn't mentioned at the last meeting, the fact that on the gate it does say that it's closed from November 1 to May 15th, which you got $30,000 to have access on a road for the purpose of accessing these areas that are managed for small game. And small game season basically opens October 1st, so there's 1 month a year that can be used for 10 years. So that's $3,000 a year you're paying for access, figuring it that way. The other issue that we ran, which it could be our math is off or somebody's math is off, is we actually put in a point from where the existing road stopped all the way through on the flagging to where it starts again on the other end, and came up with 4/10 of a mile, which is quite a bit short of 3,900 feet. You know, the time limit of 10 years is you know, not a great selling point on this. We did walk a lot of the area. We did not, apparently we thought we were in one of the blocks, but apparently we wasn't. We hadn't, because those blocks are where the existing road from Route 3 be further up them than we actually went. But pretty rocky piece of land to be calling woodcock habitat. You know, and I mean, for the other animals, yeah, probably would work out fine, excellent habitat. But on that sign, it also said Woodcock Initiative, which, can you explain to us what the Woodcock Initiative is?
Yeah, before the Unforced project was created, the focus was on woodcock, and it was referred to as the Woodcock Initiative. So that sign probably predated the creation of the Young Forest project. Now, as far as the length of road is concerned, I guess I really can't speak to that. John, can you speak to that at all?
That's the 3,900 feet. As far as I know, I haven't measured it. By the way, my name is John Lanier, and I'm the wildlife biologist. It's the consulting wildlife biologist contracted with the Wildlife Management Institute and working with this project with Wagner. I don't know whether it's 3,900 feet or 3,200 feet, but I know that the road that has been built in there, we anticipated a certain amount of money to get that road done, and the construction of that road was a lot more difficult than we anticipated. So we estimated that we got about $30,000 in it already, and we needed another $30,000 to finish it, whether it's 3,900 feet or 2,800 feet. But and then to finish it off would be part of that money would be used to put a gravel surface on it. So maintain that road is a little bit higher standard for public traffic than it would be if it was just logging trucks.
So the other potential difference between what you guys measured and what was stated by the manager, by Wagner Woodlands, because oftentimes you got to do circuitous routes, obviously, to go around wet areas and whatnot, but I don't know if that would make up the difference.
It may just be that, you know, they're going on part of what's already been built.
Yeah, there's
So,
on the Route 3 end of it, we're improving the existing road, so it doesn't end right at the end of the flag.
The other thing about woodcock, last month I presented a slide about how this work has been impacting Woodcock numbers from stinging ground surveys. I don't have that slide here today, but it was a significant increase from when they started out. It was 0 singing males that they heard in the springtime, to around 2012 it was something like 39 or 40 singing males. So it seemed from the data anyways that woodcock were utilizing those areas.
Yes, just a couple quick comments. First of all, congratulate you for taking time to go up there and look at that. That speaks very well of your interest. I want to mention that the 10 years is in fact the minimum amount of time that they have agreed to. A lot of the planning entails 20 and 30 years in terms of long term. We asked them to provide us what they thought was a reasonable minimum to accommodate what we anticipated would be your question as to how long the property would be open. It's reasonable to assume that it'll be significantly longer than that. The 10 years implies that something's going to happen to that property that will preempt us from accessing it beyond that point. But that 10 years could readily be 20 or 30 years. So please don't lose sight of that fact. My guess is it's going to be 20 or 30 years. The other point I'd make is that area, given the observations that Jim just shared with you, can become a woodcock production factory. And although for summer feeding, we tend to associate thick alluvial soils for feeding by woodcock. In fact, singing grounds and summer roosting fields are best on less fertile lands. If you recall, woodcock have a very thin leg. They are not like a grouse or turkey, an animal that pushes through thick vegetation. They prefer areas with sparse vegetation so that they can readily walk among it. And so if you do woodcock survey work, you'll notice that they tend to be in these chalky fields where you have poverty grass, never in hay fields where you have thick vegetation. So I just ask that you keep in mind from a production perspective, those chalky landscapes with less fertile soils are actually more amenable to woodcock performance in summer roosting fields. And I happen to know that because I did my graduate work with woodcock in West Virginia. And time again, the best sites were those sites where you had patches of infertile soil where the woodcock readily move about on the landscapes. So keep that in mind as well.
If I could, the only time I've been across this property myself is on a snow machine. Now, there's a trail across it, is that correct?
A snowmobile trail?
Yeah.
That I don't know.
I thought there was a snowmobile trail
It's
beyond. Or is it the road that's open to snowmobiling?
it's a remnant skid trail that you might get snow machine across. But it's an old, but the connecting between those two is an old winter skid trail. And that, you can't even find that in places.
Okay. So, I think, as big as anything is here is the hang-up is about the road being closed during what amounts to the bulk of hunting season. So, is there something, now recognizing up in this area too, the road could be closed naturally by snow, because I doubt anyone's going to plow it. So, but is there some sort of accommodation that might be made?
I'm working on them on that. Their concern is that there's a pretty sizable investment in their road infrastructure.
I get
And after November, when you started getting frost in the road and then thawing and so on and so forth, as we all know, there's some folks out there that love that to get their four-wheel drives onto and give the rig a test and leaving ruts and tearing things up, and they want to protect their investment, and I think that's logical. But what they are telling me is that they'll leave the gates open until resource damage starts to happen, and that may be mid-November or later. But after that, the place is still open to hunt. You just gotta walk. If we're putting $60,000 into this road, we really don't want people in there tearing it up. So that's part of that. dilemma. But I've been working on them now. I just give you a little background. This project is now 10 years old. And the total area of the project is almost 5,000 acres, of which we're talking about 2 here. So we're about ready to start our second round of cutting on another part of the project. So and as far as a long-term intent, this outfit, in my opinion anyhow, and I'm a skeptic when it comes to companies and long-term stuff, but this company is definitely showing signs that they want to stick with this for quite some time. And we have a cutting schedule that goes out to 70 years. So I think there's a letter on the files from the vice president of Wagner that came to you last year, saying pretty much that their intent is long-term. They've got about $100,000 invested in this, in their own labor and money. So it's nothing that they're taking lightly.
Commissioner Baldwin?
Just a quick question. Who would maintain the road after it's complete, and what would the liability be for New Hampshire Fish and Game Department? Would there be any liability as to?
No, the company retains the liability. I don't work for the company, but I'm authorized by the company to speak for the company today because the fellow that's usually here had to be in Kentucky, right? Left yesterday. So, but the management, the maintenance responsibility would stay with the company, and in the agreement that will be signed, that will be stated, so that.
So if culverts wash, they'd be responsible for.
Yep. It doesn't fall back on Fish and Game.
Commissioner Hodgdon?
Thank you. So I have two questions. One's related to Commissioner Baldwin's question. Is there a commitment on the part of the company to maintain the road in such a way that access can be continued even if there is let's say we have a rain event, there's a significant amount of erosion and washout.
No,
It's
the
expensive.
objective is to keep the roads usable. And it may wash out, it might take them a little while to fix it, but it'll get fixed.
My second question is the term of the clawback provision the full 120 months of the agreement? So, put another way, if the land were sold in the end of month one, does the clawback provision allow 100% recovery of the department's investment?
Currently, as it's currently written or drafted, it would be per month prorated basis. So if they got out at month one, we would lose out at $250. But certainly that can be rewritten to take into account, if they have to terminate within 3 months, pick your short-term time frame. We could do.
Well, I'm just more interested in the per month provision being for the full 100.
Oh, I got you.
Whereas
It is.
It's not for, say, half of the, so your maximum recovery is half your investment.
Gotcha. No, it's for
But
the
it's
full
for
term.
120 months.
Yep.
Commissioner Carr?
You said you already have $30,000. Where did that money come from?
That's a game management account revenue.
Not ours.
John
Said you had
mentioned.
$30,000 from other people. Who gave you that money?
We got that through a contract with NRCS, through the Farm Bill. And we had, that money is about to run out. And so the money we're asking for from you would be to finish the job.
I guess I walked that property the other day, and I couldn't take a step without stepping on a boulder, the smallest, which was probably the size of a basketball. Never mind the boulders in there that are close to being the size of glacial erratic.
Yes, sir, this is New Hampshire.
Yeah, I know what it is, but it's taxpayer money, so I don't take light of it.
Yeah.
And I don't see how you're gonna be able to do this for $60,000.
That's, the company estimates that they can do it, and they've done half of it for 30, so I'm pretty confident in that. I'm not an engineer, and I'm a wildlife biologist.
It's my understanding that Bayroot's a fairly large company, am I wrong?
Yes, well, the forester, is.
The land's owned by Bayroot, correct?
Say what?
The land is owned by Bayroot?
It's owned by Bayroot and managed by Wagner.
Right. Well, $30,000 seems like a drop in the bucket for Bayroot to spend themselves.
Well, like I said, they're into this the entire project for about $100,000.
Right. But they're a huge company, so $100,000, like you put a dime in the collection box.
Well, I don't know anything about that.
Neither do I. That's my problem. It almost sounds like you want us to give you money for the stuff you've already done.
No, sir. This would be the complete.
You know, from the people I talk to, you know, investment companies and companies, when they have land investments, it's that 10 or 15-year time frame where they generally sell them. Am I wrong?
I'm sorry,
I said, generally speaking, from the people I've spoken to, people who own large tracts of land, they work it, they get the timber, they get whatever other products out of it that they can sell, and then they usually sell that land to other entities, whatever it might be.
some companies do that.
Right,
This
so my
one-
concern, I wouldn't like to see a whole ton of houses up there, or based upon what I've stepped on, a huge aggregate pit. That is, you call it woodcat habitat, I'm not exactly sure that it is, that'd be correct.
No. I wish I had known you were gonna be up there. I would have been glad to come along with you and shown you what I was seeing. But as far as, well, I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. So another question would be, and perhaps Bayroot can handle all this by giving us some documentation about the financing of this project, what their true plan is for the access time limit. By the way, who made that decision for the 10-year time limit? To terminate access at 10 years?
I don't think it's a decision. That was just a,
That was a proposal on the table. It's not, access wouldn't necessarily be terminated at the end of 10 years.
Oh, well, that's what the other guy said. Who was here
Well,
last meeting.
that's the minimum that they would allow it for, that's the minimum that would be written in the agreement. But again, Bayroot and Wagner have no plans on selling the land in the foreseeable future or closing off the public access in the foreseeable future, even after 10 years. But we had to put some sort of time limit in the agreement. So 10 was the minimum that was chosen. We could go to whatever time limit the commission thinks is appropriate and see if Wagner would agree with that.
Well, my time limit is forever. Could they agree to that?
Forever, a long time.
Sure is. If we're gonna take money to give to a company who's gonna make money off of basically tax dollars, I'd like to see access forever.
Well, the management access, Bayroot and Wagner doesn't need management access with that 3,900 feet.
Yep.
They have management access for the
Again.
whole entire property from, on this area here off of Route 3.
Right.
So that hits it, so they have management access here. They have management access to this section through this section of Wilderness
Yeah.
Road.
I'm not
It's
talking
really
about
only-
management access, I'm talking about access by the public.
No, I understand that. And so this access here would be for the public. Because Bayroot and Wagner don't need that 3,900 feet to
Right.
manage
But
that
there's
land.
nothing to say, and I'd like to see something in writing anyway. There's nothing in writing that says that a 10-year time frame is what it stands at now. If there is, I haven't seen it.
We've drafted up a grant agreement, but we're happy to share with the commission and get your input
I
on it.
think that should have been given to us before this was even made as an informational item, or at that time.
Commissioner Stoll.
Jim and John, do you know if the Warren property is for sale?
Is it?
Yes. 36 or 39 acres, it is for sale.
Hmm.
Is Warren's access tract?
No, Warren's access site is for sale. Warren's
That's the guy that
property
won't
is-
let the
is
public in.
resident.
Oh, the field,
Yeah,
the folks who own the field.
yeah, it is for sale. You said that 10 years was something that maybe the commission could go a different number. Would they entertain 20 years?
We'd have to go back to them and ask.
Of course, the clawback would be less.
Right.
I'm having a hard time understanding if they can be trusted. The gentleman said, hey, I guess the forester last meeting and the gates were closed. And I said, well, when I see a gate, that means keep out. He said, well, we can open them. So I figured they'd be open, but when these gentlemen went up, the gates are still closed. They didn't open the gate. They didn't make it welcome to anybody, including these gentlemen.
That
Now-
was, that was an oversight. It just got forgotten because the intent was to open them.
Okay. Now, on another angle here, I checked with a couple people that hunt that property quite a bit. One of them happens to be a game warden. I've known him since he was this high. He went to college and became a biologist. I never held that against him. He could catch a fish out of a mud puddle and shoot a deer in the desert. And he has hunted that whole property. He thinks it is a very good piece of property. I don't know, I haven't been on it, these gentlemen have been on it, and they have a different opinion of it. The other gentleman has hunted a little bit of it. He said he wouldn't know woodcock cover if he saw one, but it was pretty good deer, bear, and particularly grouse and rabbit cover up in there. So I would really personally like to see 20 years on that. By that time, I'll be dead and somebody else can carry the torch from that point on. Part of it's in my county, the other part's in Todd's county, Bethlehem part. 20 years I'd like to see. And the gate open. Do you think that's possible, John? You said you have a right to speak for him.
I can't say yes or no about the 20 years. I think the answer you might get is that that piece of land, that whole 5,000 acres, has a I can't think of the term, but there is an agreement with the Rumford Mill on that piece of land, no matter who owns it. There's X amount of wood that has to come off of that land for a lot longer than 20 years. And so it's going to be managed probably in the format that we set up for a long time. And,
so 20 years really shouldn't be.
so it may not make any difference to them, the 20 years, but you know, it's hypothetical. If they sell it, then you know, whoever the new landowner is going to have to agree or not agree to that. But
Well, if it goes with a deed, they're gonna.
yeah, well, I mean, they have to continue to produce wood, but they don't have to they'd have to redo the agreement with Fish and Game. So,
But we can claw back.
yeah, but, you know, and to my way of thinking, they have no intention of selling it. So, they're in it, and they wanna continue with it, so. I will relay that concern back to them and tell them that as far as I'm concerned, they ought to go with 20.
Thank you.
That would take care of half of the problem,
That's exactly what I'm thinking.
you know, but the other half is November 1st closing the gates.
That's contingent on whether or not, what the conditions are. So they're willing to leave it open longer, provided they're not getting damaged. But when they start getting the damage, then it gets really expensive to maintain the road. And, you know, I can't blame them for wanting to protect their investment.
But, I mean, part of our job is to protect the investment
Of the road.
people who are paying the money that goes into the habitat account to give you for the road. I mean, the other.
Doesn't preclude hunting, it just precludes driving in there.
Well, you could hunt there whether the road's built or not, then, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so the 30 grand to provide a road for access doesn't do any good if you can't be on it.
Okay, so what, you know.
So what I'm thinking, the other thing to talk to them about, if it went to December 15th, that's the end of the deer season.
But they can't promise to leave the road open that late because of the potential for damage. And the Forest Service is the same way. You know, but the Forest Service has got more gates than they got a road. But, you know, and they're protecting supposedly, public money. But
There's a compromise there.
Yeah.
Just do December 15th unless the road conditions are so bad as to put some sort of clause in the wording. Open until December 15th unless for some reason the road is going to be damaged to.
You know it's gonna get, if it's rain and snow and it's open, people are gonna go in there and rip the friggin' place up. You just know that's gonna happen. It's like, you just know it.
The one thing that I noticed on this road, which, I mean, I've been messing around building roads for a little while now, since late 70s. The road base of that road is basically 2-foot boulders.
that's what they are.
And it's the soil type. It was pouring, we went up there, and I mean, you couldn't make a puddle if you had a fire truck up there. Everything's drained really well. I would think that road would be really a lot more tolerant than most roads are during December and whatnot that are just made, using
Might well be.
loam and clay like everybody else has to work with.
I was gonna say earlier that the forester that I've been working with on the Ray Berthium, who was here last meeting, he went to school as a forest engineer. I mean, he is a road builder, and so I think the fact of the matter is that road is well drained, but part of that is by design. And if you get off of that road a little further in or either side of it, you don't have to go very deep to get to water. And so I thought they did a pretty good job, but it became a lot more expensive to do that than we anticipated.
Right, my point is it made a lot more durable road than probably most of the town dirt roads.
Yeah.
So, I would, I don't know if we ought to try to table this and have you talk to them again and see what can be done, or whether we want to move forward with this, or what. Commissioner Carr?
I'll make a motion that we table it. Was hearing about information that was not presented in the informational presentation that we should have had. Now there's some other issues about length of access. Eric's come about 20 years, and obviously these folks have to go back to the people who actually makes the decision about this. So without additional information, I don't see how we can move forward on it based upon what we were told today.
Okay, motion made to table by Commissioner Carr, seconded by Commissioner Green. Discussion.
Yes.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
What?
I don't think a table motion is, you can discuss that,
You can't?
but I don't think so, but you can go ahead.
Well, you may be correct.
Where's our legal expert here, Paul? Are we allowed to discuss a table?
I would read it, this is an action item that is before the commission.
Yeah.
And so you have
in front of you now a motion where the action that you're taking is to delay action to another meeting if in fact your motion to table is approved. So I don't think that this is out of order for you at all, because it is an action item in front of you. You're taking the action saying, I need more information before we make a final decision.
And being that I don't know what the comment would be, it may be people that have other items that they wish to have you look into. So rather than coming back next month and then give you another list of concerns, if we can take care of them all in one shot would probably be handy. So,
Well, I might
Commissioner Temple.
have a point of order rather than a
Oh,
discussion.
Sure.
So
Mess
I
it
just
up.
want to make sure that, I just want to make sure that all the commissioners, and perhaps we can get some advice, understand what it takes to bring a motion off the table. And who's authorized to do that and how that works. That's all I want to know. So if we put this on the table and it's laid on the table, how does it come off the table? Only by those in favor?
The commission does not have specific rules in order to govern these really arcane types of parliamentary procedures. To me, in a much more simple environment, what you would have is an action item that essentially you have delayed until the next regular meeting of the commission, at which point it would once again be on the agenda. And at that point, the commission as a whole would vote to determine how it would resolve that continued action item.
Okay. Anything else?
It appears that everything is revolving around access, whether it's how much road we're building, how many years we're going to have access. I'd just like something cleared up. This property is open for access to hunting now, is it not?
Yes.
And so if we give you the money, we're improving the access for people to drive to different parts of it.
Mhm.
But we still have access to the property. So building this road might help someone who can't walk as far as they used to, maybe have a handicap or whatever. And so that's a help, in my opinion. But this property could be closed any time to hunting. So I'm very happy with the 20-year guaranteed access. And we have access now. I feel that spending this money would improve the number of people who could use this property. And if you do the math, it's pretty cheap.
May I make a comment?
Yes, actually, I'm done.
Yeah. When we came here to the commission last year, we were asking for help with road building money. And the major criticism was that there wasn't adequate public access. So I went to work with the company and we put together a pretty complicated process through the NRCS. If you've ever dealt with them, you know what I'm talking about. And we got some money, and we thought we had enough money to complete the road in response to criticism from the commission last year. And so it turns out there wasn't enough money to complete the job because the road was more difficult to build than we were anticipating. So we're back here now, responding to your request from last year to provide the access, and then asking you to help us provide that access. That's what it boils down to. And half of it's done. So the intent's there. It's just that we need some more money to finish it. It's about that simple.
Okay. Commissioner
One
Carroll?
other question, Chairman.
Okay. Call for a vote. All in favor of tabling till the next meeting, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Thank you.
Just so I have a clear path of what questions there were. The question was, will they agree to 20 years? Will they agree to leave the road open until December 15th? Anything else?
Yeah, I'll take this on.
Mark?
Are there any nuances to that December 15th date? As an example, if they receive soft snow that is going to damage the road, are you willing to flex on that? Can we essentially tell them that the commission supports the proposal with these two accommodations? Or are we going to hear additional requests the next time we come back? I think it would help us as a department to be able to present them with a concrete position so they can respond confidently.
Try getting into it. I have to wear a different hat here, but I'm kind of used to roads being posted. Being that I run heavy trucks, and towns don't want you on dirt roads to damage in either, but they can't post them before May 1st. Now, we ain't asking until May 1st, we're asking until December 15th, which is a road built to handle logging trucks in good weather. I don't think we're asking a lot on that. I mean, if you wanted to put something in where, for some unknown reason, there is damage that's occurring, that they could get permission from Fish and Game to post it. But, I mean, arbitrarily do it, I don't see how you can do that, Mark.
I'll just tell you that for decades, we've had to deal with road access issues that end early because of even the moose season. Roads are being posted for access, so that's a very early season. I'm just concerned that I would expect, given my experience up there, that they're going to have concerns about that. I'm fine with representing whatever the department decides, but I really think it would help, given this would be probably the third or fourth time we've addressed this issue based on past history, to give them, here it is, we finally come to a collective agreement. If you do this, we're good. If that's the position, I think that's an easier sell, that's all I would say. If it's a hard December 15th and you guys collectively agreed on that, that's fine with us. We're just putting an opportunity on the table for you to consider.
Commissioner Green.
First, Mark, I want to thank you for the fact that we've met twice on this. Probably half those questions that I asked you were answered in the slide on today's meeting. My biggest question that I've had on this, and I've gone back and forth on this whole deal, going from in favor to against, in favor to against. We're getting tons of questions that are coming up. I agree with Commissioner Stohl on the 20 years, but I think for the next hearing, which would help us a lot, bring the agreement. Let us read the agreement. So we're not going into a he said, she said, they said, whatever. Would like something to read. There's new commissioners on this commission. I don't even know if this company has done business with Fish and Game in the past. One of my things is reputation. I want to believe which is the same. That if you could at least bring a copy of, the lease, what you want agreed to us, so we can make a decision instead of saying, hey, we have to put it off again. We know winter's coming. But I want to thank you, Mark, personally, for paying attention to the questions I asked you when they were answered today on that slide, so thank you.
So please understand, if we brought it to you, of course, it's been dynamic, the numbers have been changing, but also we have to vet it through the Attorney General's office. They're the people that will satisfy some of the hard questions that you might ask. We're just essentially putting down the basic understanding of an agreement that they're willing to sign, and it's vetted through the Attorney General's office. So I'm concerned that what we present to you...
Agree, Mark, but you know what, $30,000 is $30,000.
So is there a draft agreement actually put together?
Yeah.
there is.
Yeah, I put it together like last week. Just so I could share with Ray and say, Ray, are you good with these terms? Which are the terms that I presented today.
Ray meaning William.
Yeah, Ray Woodlands.
Okay. So we have a draft we can share with them anyway, is what
Yeah,
I'm saying.
yeah.
Yes,
But I think
okay.
before we present it to the commission, I'm gonna redo the,
Right.
update the draft with the terms that you guys talked about. Give that to Wagner. Wagner, are you good with this? And whatever their answer is, I'll share with you guys along with the draft agreement.
I think we have probably one unanswered question still, and that's what date do we want the gates open until? And I'd suggest maybe a compromise of December 1st, because a great deal of hunting season is over by December 1st. You've got 2 very likely weeks where you're going to have significant damage, from December 15th to December 1st. That 2 weeks, there's a lot more likely you're going to have damage than November 15th to December 1st. So that would give us access for most of hunting season and protect them for a real important 2 weeks of road damage. Thought.
Anything else? Okay. So we've already called for a vote. We told them what concerns are, so I just, we're all set.
Yep.
Thank you. Informational items with Bonte.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Welcome aboard, new commissioner. I am Kathy Labonte, Chief of the Business Division, and every month I come up and just give a little 2-minute spiel on how the Unrestricted Fishing Game Fund is doing. So you should have received 2 financial informational packets in your packet of information Tanya sends out to you. The first of which is the September financial statement. And I'm going to be really boring this month in that I have nothing good or bad to report other than we are pretty much right on schedule where we were last year. If you turn to page 3, where we have our year-to-date comparison from last fiscal year to this fiscal year, in our unrestricted licenses, we're only $12,000 difference, a little bit higher. And on page 4, we're considerably higher of our projected budgeted revenue. So things actually are going very well according to plan. You also should have received your first quarter commission expense to budget report. And I would like to entertain any questions you have on either of those financial documents. Going once, going twice?
I think I know the answer, but I gotta ask a question.
Absolutely.
Math major here. I'm looking at the undesignated fund balance sheet, which is, I don't know what page it's on, page 1, I guess. We're burning, this year we're budgeted to burn up 1.3 million of the fund. Is that correct?
Could you tell me what you're looking at? Are you
Yeah.
looking at the financial statement itself?
Yes,
Okay, page 1.
page 1. Down there under the deficit, excess, parentheses, deficit.
Oh, in red, yes, 1.3.
Yeah, mine's not in red, but that's okay. We're burning up 1.3 of the Fish and Game Fund.
Correct.
And the Fish and Game Fund is only 3.9 million to start with.
To begin with, correct.
So doing simple math, we got about 2 years before we really run out of money.
Well, I cannot project that because there are many variables that go into that little equation. If you look at this snapshot in time, if we were to spend all of our unrestricted appropriations that we're authorized to spend this year, our revenues came in exactly as what we're predicting, then yes, we would decrease the surplus by 1.3 million. That has never happened because of all those other variables that go into that equation. Okay?
Any other questions for Kathy? Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you.
I have one question.
Oh,
Oh,
So for our next meeting, could you provide a fund balance for the end of the fiscal year for the last, say, 5 years, just so we could see what the trend was in that balance?
absolutely.
Is
There's
a longer term an onerous request, or is 5 years?
Actually, what all I will have to do is go to the state's CAFRA, the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, and they have a 10-year snapshot on that balance.
Longer is always better.
Yep, so I can provide that for the next meeting, no problem. Anything else?
thank you, Kathy.
Thanks.
Standing committees. Policy Committee, Commissioner Carr.
Did not meet.
Okay. I am going to add a new member to the Policy Committee. I'm going to add Christina Luppi. Rivers. Volunteered a lot.
Exactly.
Rivers Committee. Commissioner Hodgdon. No, I was going to skip legislative. All right, we'll do legislative first.
Why are we going to skip me?
Legislative Committee, Commissioner Stohl.
Thank you. Paul emailed me, and then I asked Tanya through Paul, I guess, to email his report to me, to the rest of the committee. And Paul highlighted six bills that are out there, LSIs, all they are is titles, no description of what they are, that is on that horizon and some other situation. I didn't feel as though it was worth calling a committee together for that purpose, because there's no meat to the material. But Paul, have you got anything that you'd like to add to that? Please.
Thank you, Commissioner. Again, I'm Paul Sanderson. I'm the Legal and Legislative Coordinator for the department. On the report, what I can indicate is yesterday there was a meeting of the Fish and Game Committee to deal with House Bill 1342 and House Bill 1343, which had been retained from the last session. In both cases, the committee voted to have them not recommended for future legislation. So that was an update that wasn't available when my report was given to you. Other than that, everything in the report remains the same.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. All set?
That's it.
Okay. Rivers Committee with Commissioner Hodgdon.
Thank you. So the Rivers Committee, the Rivers Management Advisory Commission has met, first meeting since I was appointed by Governor and Council, and I think there are two items that I would report. The first being that PES reported that they intend to seek an additional biologist in the budget for the next 2-year biennium, and the goal of that position would be to examine the effect of the water management plan on the Sauhegan and Lamprey rivers. And it interested me because it seemed that that work is something that the department may have some crossover with. So wanted to just bring that interest on their part to the attention of the commission and the staff. And then the second item, and really the largest part of the meeting, was a prioritization of the river segments that they're going to work on for developing a water management plan. And the commission identified and ranked 8 rivers, all headwaters segments of rivers, and practically speaking, there's budget to look at about 30 miles of stream annually, so it's going to take some time to work through all those rivers, but the prioritization's been done and been adopted or accepted by the commission.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Hodgdon. Lakes Committee, Commissioner Millette.
The Lakes Committee, the LMAC did meet, and again, as with Commissioner Hodgdon, it was my second meeting. The first meeting was rather informal, didn't really drill down on a lot of the issues, some of which you just brought up. The rest, I didn't understand the thing they were saying. They were engineers, like 35-year career biologist, a lot of things are coming together for the end of the year. Trying to wrap my mind around all the acronyms was daunting, but I have gone online and cyber-stalked all of the acronyms, and I'm more confused. But I will defer my report till next month because a lot of things are coming together for them. They're in their budgetary, wrapping up the budgetary process, and there's rule changes and things Chris referred to, which cross. So in November, I'll be more articulate. So I will pass.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Millette. Strategic Planning Committee, Commissioner Hodgdon.
Just a quick update for the full commission. We met this morning. Commissioner Stohl and Baldwin were able to attend, and our work continues on trying to figure out how to identify any possible alternative sites to the preferred site on Lake Sunapee. And then we discussed how the work that the Senate Bill 48 committee may inform our strategic plan, which we're about halfway through the 5-year strategic plan. So really no action items to report, more of a process and update related committee meeting.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Hodgdon. Wildlife Heritage Foundation, Commissioner Hodgdon.
So there was not a board meeting of the foundation since our last commission meeting, but the foundation did have an excellent, what I would term friend-raising event hosted by the chair at her home on Lake Sunapee. It was a great opportunity to connect with folks who are supporters of the foundation, who help raise the funds, which we all appreciate and depend on. Just all around a very successful event, and the governor was kind enough to send a proclamation, which I thought if you would indulge me, I would read. It has some very kind words for the foundation and the work that the department does. This is related to the fact that October 1st through the 7th is Wildlife Heritage Week. Commentary from the audience. Whereas the Wildlife Heritage Foundation of New Hampshire, the official nonprofit organization of the New Hampshire Fish and Game Department, is integral in keeping New Hampshire's wild places and wild things truly wild. And whereas sustaining the traditions, lifestyles, and outdoor landscapes that we cherish helps benefit future generations and is the essence of our mission. Whereas fishing, hunting, boating, hiking, and wildlife watching are among the many activities keeping New Hampshire as one of the nation's most inspiring states in which to spend time outdoors. And whereas it's important to work hand in hand with educators, biologists, scientists, researchers, conservation officers to leverage resources to help keep our fish and wildlife habitats healthy and abundant. And whereas keeping New Hampshire's great outdoors thriving, safe, through public education, species conservation, law enforcement, canine search rescue, we attract millions of people who enjoy hiking, canoeing, kayaking, snowmobiling, fishing, hunting, and off-road vehicle recreation. And whereas protecting and restoring our natural environment is vital to our local, regional, and national economy because they sustain inland marine fisheries and game habitats and land water access to help feed citizens and ensure outdoor recreational opportunities for current and future generations and generate jobs throughout New Hampshire. I, Christopher T. Sununu, proclaim October 1st through the 7th New Hampshire Wildlife Heritage Week and call this to the attention of all citizens. So it was nice recognition of all the work that everyone does both inside and outside the department. And then lastly, because the work of fundraising never ends, Foundation's in the process of starting its annual firearms raffle. So just as a review, between November 1st and the end of December, the tickets are on sale for $40, and there'll be a total of 1,000 tickets sold. There'll be 30 winners drawn on January 7th and 8th, 15 each day. And our hope is that in addition to the work the foundation and all its supporters does to sell tickets, that the folks on the commission or anyone else who are interested may both purchase and hopefully even sell a couple of tickets. So if anyone's interested in that, reach out to me or Gail, who's the keeper of all these things. So it's an important fundraiser that they do.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Hodgdon. Awards Committee.
Well,
Commissioner
Mr.
Baldwin.
Chairman, we did not meet, but I want to congratulate whoever from Fish and Game put out a press release. I think this is probably one of the earliest that they've put out such a fine request for people to send in nominations for these awards. I don't know who did it, but whoever did it was a job well done.
Public Affairs did it.
Did it? And who would that be?
Tickler.
Well done. Very nice.
Okay, anybody have any old business? New business, we have the November commission meeting, which happens to fall on the opening day of year season. And traditionally, we have put it off. If we put it off, it would end up having it the day before Thanksgiving, which isn't too well taken either. So, is there anybody who would like to make a motion that we postpone the November meeting? And if circumstances arise that we have to have a meeting, then we will set one up.
I'll make that motion to postpone the November meeting.
Okay, Commissioner Carr, seconded Commissioner Stohl. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Thank you. Commissioner reports. Are there any commissioners that have had some extraordinary event take place during the past month?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Stohl?
I was down here for 2 meetings in this lovely city of Concord. Nothing to do with Fish and Game. One was in the morning, one was in the evening, so I had a chance to rocket up 89 up to Wild Goose. So I was able to personally see Wild Goose. For the life of me, I can't understand why we don't have a boat launch at that site. I don't see enough problem there to have that not be accepted, but working with Commissioner Hodgdon and his committee, I think we're making a few inroads, tentacles going out for possibly handling that situation, and I hope CORD affords us the time and the space to see what we can do. And I want to thank Chris for doing a little bit of legwork that he did and kind of got us on a path that we might want to go down. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Commissioner Stoll. Anybody else? Okay, we'll move on to Director's Report.
All right, so I missed the Sunapee meeting that Commissioner Hodgson mentioned, because I was up at Berry Camp. So our dining hall additions come along. I was up there with the state inspector and our builder, making sure that things are happening the way they're supposed to be. 2 steps forward, a half a step back kind of a situation, but that is, that's ongoing. November, I want to say November 8th, if the date is in my mind, is the next Concord meeting, where there'll be no vote taken, but there'll be an opportunity for the agencies to, meaning us and Red, what used to be Red. I'm like, what? to speak about the property. In our case, why we should, hang on to it. In Dred's case, what I don't even know what they want to do, frankly. I've got no indication that they have a direction that they're choosing whether or not to do anything with it. Because the recommendation is they take control. It would be unprecedented for an agency that doesn't want a property removed from their control to have it done. So I don't know what'll happen there, but we will see. Things are pretty quiet right now. Of course, nothing much is happening prior to the elections. Everybody's waiting to see what'll happen with that. And so there's not much legislation. There's really not even any budget talk. We turned in our numbers to the governor, and nothing is, really going on at this stage. I don't think it will until after the election, in which time the governor will need to start actually putting together what's going to be a presentation to the legislature. More accurately, I guess I should say his or her presentation to the legislature. That's really it. It's been fairly quiet. On a personal note, my wife has been ill and she's going to be in Boston for the next couple of weeks, so I will probably be taking some time down there. But again, things are pretty quiet here right now, so no big deal. If anybody need to reach me, you know how. Thank you, Director.
Call to the public. Mr. Carney.
I tried to kick it on the air before he went out the door. I thought I was going to ask the question here, but two gentlemen might be, commission might be interested in knowing that there was a grant placed by the Fish and Wildlife Foundation, and I think almost $1 million from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Some of that money has been put into this land for habitat improvement. John said, well, it's been a while, the money's all gone from the Wildlife Management Institute. And they brought that up here in front of this commission, but it was almost well over $1 million was designed for woodcock, grouse, and songbird habitat improvement. And John said, yeah, some of it was done on that land. He can't remember how much or what, but a lot of that money did go in there. You might want to ask that question because there's a lot of fish and wildlife money been invested up there in some of that property. He just told me that when he left it had been. So, in fact, if you go back 2 or 3 years, you may find it in the records how much money was granted through these federal grants.
Thank you. Gail.
Yes, I just wanted to clarify Commissioner Hodgdon's remarks about the gun raffle. This is a joint gun raffle between the Wildlife Heritage Foundation and Operation Game Thief. So it will benefit both organizations. Okay? Thank you.
Who's next?
I apologize, first of all, for the barking dog.
Well,
I choose sometimes.
I'm just glad it wasn't a real dog.
I sometimes look around for the barking dog myself. I just wanted to comment again about the 11,000 plus pheasants, non-native pheasants, which have been purchased by the department. And these pheasants that are being released at designated times and places. which are then released and for the hunters to go out and to shoot. Clearly, this is a hunt which is a canned hunt. And I think it is totally inappropriate for the Fish and Game Department to be involved in a canned hunt. I think you really need to reconsider this. What is equally disturbing about this, however, is that there was a report on the, I guess, WNUR broadcast that that Fish and Game apparently designated a school for the children to come out and to have a time to watch the release of the pheasants. Now, there was also some discussion that this was, this is really demonstrating the responsibility that the Fish and Game Department has to the New Hampshire citizens for its responsibility for providing hunting opportunities. I think it's most unfortunate for these little people, and they were somewhere up to the 8th grade, and you saw them at various levels, to be out watching the release of these birds and the discussion about the responsibility that Fish and Game has for providing hunting opportunities. I'm really concerned that these young people will think that when they see, for instance, so many of these programs where you have release of wildlife back into the the landscape because they've been injured, etc., that they will identify or think that basically what we're doing is doing that so that they can be hunted. I think that's most unfortunate. And I guess I have two questions for you. One, is there any consideration for ending this canned hunt? And the second is whether or not the Fish and Game Department is now going to use this kind of a canned hunt as an outreach to schools.
Thank you. I guess it would be the Wildlife Division you'd want to address on that. If you did not, if you did not like any of the wildlife regulations, that's who you'd address your comments to. So.
Okay, we're waiting. I'm sorry.
No, we're waiting for Marge to answer that. She had a question.
Well, he isn't necessarily obliged to have to answer right this moment, but.
Nobody's obliged to answer a question.
And you want me to say something?
Yeah, you can go ahead if you want.
I'll just make two comments. The thing on WMR with the school kids, I'm only going to say one thing to that. It was not our idea, period. The pheasant situation has been ongoing in the state for, I don't know, 100 years, Mark? Something like that.
Perhaps more.
I have literature upstairs in my office, a study that was done in 1947, looking at all the aspects of the pheasant hunting, which if you read that, you can find strikingly similar to the exact commentary that is brought up today on both sides of the issues. And finally, I would say that whatever you think about the pheasant hunt, it's highly popular. We have thousands of people participating in it, and absent a press for change by the commission or others, I don't see it changing in the near future anyway. So, that's all I have to say.
Any other comments? Julia?
I just want to give you some food for thought. When something is done today, 2018, as it was done in 1947, and saying, well, we have the same reasons that we had in 1947, it might be a good time to relook at standards and things like that. It might be a good time. There's a lot of things changed since 1947. Not to mention the public adversity. It's like, it's dreadful that you haven't rethought of things since 1947 and before, 100 years ago.
Anybody else? Yeah, we have Commissioner Kennedy.
We have dove hunting in 44 other states, we don't have it here. So why couldn't we have dove hunting? Maybe we swap pheasants for doves. It's a big thing, go all over the country, it's a big sport.
Any other comments?
Sorry about that.
Can I just ask one other question? And that is, I don't think it's necessarily in opposition to the pheasant hunting, or whether pheasant hunting was done in 1945 or 1947. That's not the issue. The issue here is the canned hunt, and that is going out and buying animals or buying birds to put them out in the field. So it's sort of like, just going out and using them for target practice and shooting them. I mean, that's the issue. The issue is not, and it's not the pheasant hunting. The issue is the canned hunt, which I think that the Fish and Game should not be involved in. There should be some other way.
Any other comments? Hear a motion to adjourn? To adjourn. Commissioner Carr, seconded by Commissioner Hatch. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?